Today is the third Sunday of Advent, and the passage from the Gospel that we read at Mass this morning is about John the Baptist as a voice carrying the word. It's taken from the first chapter of St. John's Gospel. I will read it to you. A man came, sent by God. His name was John. He came as a witness to speak for the light, so that everyone might believe through him. He was not the light, only a witness to speak for the light. This is how John appears as a witness. When the Jews sent priests and Levites from Jerusalem to ask him, "Who are you?" he not only declared, but he declared quite openly, "I am not the Christ." Well, then they asked, "Are you Elijah?" "I am not," he said. "Are you the prophet?" He answered, "No." So they said to him, "Who are you? We must take back an answer to those who sent us. What have you to say about yourself?" So John said, "I am, as Isaiah prophesied, a voice that cries in the wilderness, 'Make a straight way for the Lord.'" Now these men had been sent by the Pharisees, and they put this further question to him: "Why are you baptizing if you're not the Christ, not Elijah, and not the prophet?" And John replied, "I baptize with water, but there stands among you, unknown to you, the one who is coming after me, and I am not fit to undo his sandal strap." This happened at Bethany on the far side of the Jordan, where John was baptizing. So John said he was a voice, and a voice carries a word, and Christ is the word. Remember at the beginning of that gospel, it said, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." So John, a voice, is carrying the word. If a voice doesn't have a word, it doesn't convey anything. It reaches your ear, but tells you nothing. If I have an idea, or a thought, or a feeling which I want to convey to you, I try to find words to express it. And then I use my voice, and if you can hear it and take the word into yourself and the idea or the feeling, then you have the idea and you have the feeling and I have it as well. And we don't need the voice anymore. So John was the voice carrying the word. And once the word, Christ, is known to people, the voice isn't wanted anymore. A voice is a very temporary thing. The word that you receive, or the idea, is permanent, it stays. So how do you think John the Baptist felt to realize that he was just a voice? Well, when it first happens, his disciples were quite upset. John was a famous preacher. He was a celebrity. I think a bit political at times. Certainly the government and the king hated him. They killed him in the end. But people were flocking to him, and very sincerely flocking and coming to wanting to look for the Christ and to better themselves, to be better people. And then his disciples came to John one day and said, there's someone else baptizing. They could see competition. Jesus is baptizing on the other side of the river. What shall we do? And then John replied with a phrase which has become famous now: "He must increase and I must decrease." John's fulfillment and joy was to bring Christ, not to draw attention to himself, but to Christ. And once he'd done that, he had nothing more to give. He was the voice, and the voice conveys the word. And the word of God, God himself has come to us. And in the gospel expresses it as a light. He came as John came as a witness to the light. Christ was the light. You know, with light, you don't normally see light. You only see what light shines on. If you see a beautiful flower, you don't look at the light, you look at the flower. And it'd be beautiful because you can see it. You can only see it because there's light on it. And if you see any beautiful scene or person or anything that you see, the light allows you to see it. Christ reveals where he is if we can see it. Sometimes you see a thing quite suddenly. Sometimes it takes time to see it. I remember years ago, when I was a young man, I was out walking in England in the countryside, and a friend of mine said, "Do you want to see a pheasant on her nest?" I said, "Well, that'd be interesting. Well, come, I'll show you." And he took me to a hedge, and I looked down over the hedge, and he said, "Do you see it?" Well, there was just a pile of leaves. I said, "No, it's not there." "Keep looking," he said. Now, no, a hen pheasant is sort of brown, light and dark brown. And what I was looking at wasn't a pile of leaves. It was a hen pheasant on her nest. I couldn't see if there were eggs underneath or chicks. She was probably scared stiff because I was looking, but she was not going to leave it. And she just stayed still. And if my friend hadn't said, "Keep looking," I wouldn't have seen it. Gradually, my eyes were open. I was looking all the time. I said, "I can see it. It's beautiful." And this happens when we see with our mind and heart. One man called Anthony Bloom, when he was a young man, his family were Russian Orthodox, but he really disliked any form of religion. Once he got into an awkward situation, had to listen to a priest. It drove him mad, to the extent when he got home, he was so angry he was going to write something about it. He said, "I'll check it first." So he asked his grandmother if she had some Gospels, and she had the 4 Gospels. So he said, "I chose the shortest so as to waste less time," and it was Mark. And then he said, by the time I got to chapter 3, it's only a few pages, Christ was there. Christ had moved me. The man was taken out of his mind. And this was this wasn't just a passing phase. Later he became a priest and became a very famous archbishop in the Russian Orthodox Church, a great man. Suddenly he saw it. And the same with us. But often I think we need time, and Advent is really a time in which I focus and I try to see what the coming of Christ really means to me. There's a lovely hymn. They don't sing it very much now, I don't think, but it used to be famous and used to be well known. I won't sing it to you, that would drive you away, but I'll say what I remember the first verse. Like the dawning of the morning on the mountain's golden heights, like the breaking of the moonbeams on the gloom of cloudy nights, like a secret told by angels getting known upon the earth, is the mother's expectation of Messiah's speedy birth. I know one young couple were walking to the maternity ward. They couldn't afford a taxi and there weren't many buses that morning. And hoping they would get there in time, it was her second child and they sang that hymn together. You can just imagine a young couple. She's about to give birth. And so they sang this Advent hymn. And the image is fantastic. Like the dawning of the morning on the mountain's golden heights. If you've ever lived or walked in mountainous country, so in the early morning you go along, the sun is up I suppose, so it's light, it's not dark, but between the mountains it's not very bright. Look up, you might see a blue sky, but it's not very bright. And then when the sun comes over mountains on one side and touches the mountains on the other side, suddenly they light up. It is most beautiful. They catch the sunlight and gradually it grows as the sun rises. Different colours, it might be just snow, it might be other colour. The dawning of the morning on the mountain's golden height, seeing that is like seeing Christ. That's all. That's the expression. Or another one is like the breaking of the moonbeams on the gloom of cloudy nights. Recently I'm living by the sea, and I went out in the middle of the night actually to see, because I knew it was almost a full moon, and it was so cloudy there was no moon, really just dark. It wasn't absolutely dark, the moon must have given a bit of light to it, but no sign of the moon. I looked this way and that, and then the clouds opened and the moonbeams came through, like one of those pictures you see of the last day or something. You could see the moonbeams, but also it caught the sea, shimmering. It really took my breath away because it happened so suddenly. Is that how the coming of Christ is? Like the breaking of the moonbeams on the gloom of cloudless night, cloudy night. Or now the one I really like is, like a secret told by angels getting known upon the earth. Angels don't need words to speak, except when they speak to humans. When they spoke to Mary, they needed words. Angels just communicate. So imagine one angel communicating to another that Christ is become human, that God has become human, Christ is born. The secret told by angels getting known upon the earth, gradually spreading. And this, the hymn says, is the mother's expectation of Messiah's speedy birth. It's not always speedy. Take the time to look for it and to see what you really want. Last year a couple came to live in the parish here from another country, and when they were talking, or she came to see me, the wife, and she said, we're married 7 years, we've no children. And I said, do you really want children? And she said, well, I'm not sure really. I said, what does your husband think? He said, well, he doesn't mind one way or the other. And then she came back a week or two later after praying about it and said, I really would love to have a child. So we started praying. She prayed, I prayed, and other people did. But nothing happened, and gradually got rather put on the back burner because she had to go back home. Her father was very ill, and her father died when she was there. And then her sister became very ill, and we had so much to pray about. And then a few weeks ago, she sent me an email saying, good news, but sit down before you read this. I'm pregnant. And she was full of joy. And she waited till her husband come home to tell him. He who'd said he didn't mind one way or the other. Didn't mind one way or the other. When he heard, he was out of his mind with joy and happiness, and they hugged each other and wept. They hadn't realized what they really needed, what they really wanted. And we want Christ, and we don't always realize how much. Pray for this realization, because deep in your heart, this is what you want. And when you see Christ with your heart, everything is different. Prepare a way for the Lord.